So welcome to another edition of PartnerTalk. I'm here with our newly announced strategic partner, Tom from IFS, here at AVEVA World. Just had a monster announcement yesterday, both CEOs on stage together, talking about bringing these two industrial powerhouses together, IFS and AVEVA. So Tom, maybe just a few moments just about yourself and a little bit about the company.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Tom Rahder. I am the VP of Marketing at IFS. My responsibility is primarily for our asset solution, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But I look across the whole of the portfolio and have been part of the team working on this, bringing this partnership to life over the last couple of months, and it's been a blast, Brian.
It's been fast, which I think in today's world has to be fast. But I think the thing that's really exciting is the vision by which it was built under. Of course, AVEVA, known for delivering the digital twin. Design, build, operate, optimize, unifying the asset lifecycle, really focused on making the physical world digital. And then IFS, of course, really kind of presented as the bookends of that, taking that digital twin to execution on integration of field service management and asset management, but then also back into the asset planning side and the capital investment side. So maybe you can give your view on why this is such an exciting partnership.
I watched you describing it, and you're handed that, and that's the natural thing, and that's what customers are talking to us about. There's a cycle, there's a life cycle here, and individually we are very strong at solving a lot of that life cycle, right? The design, build, operate, optimize from AVEVA, asset investment planning from IFS, through to asset management and then the field maintenance. But if you think about it from a customer perspective, and this is the exciting part of the partnership, is they need both. They need to be able to build, before you can even build an asset, you need capital, right? When you've got capital, you need to do the design, the build, operate. You then need to think about how we manage those assets and then we maintain and service those assets. And over all of this is the AI conversation. It's inevitable. Think of all of that data. What can you do with the data? And we're only just scratching the surface, but there's some really interesting use cases coming to the fore.
Absolutely. I think obviously the buzz continues to be all around AI, and particularly that in industry continues to be really interested in it. However, we know that most projects, either half to or more than half, fail because of the lack of good data quality, because complexity and integration. And so I think this really does start to lay the foundation, and it really shows our commitment to helping customers go solve that problem.
The failure of the AI projects is a topic of conversation. I've literally just come from upstairs at AVEVA World, where we've had a round table. So AVEVA and IFS hosting jointly a number of customers across industries, chemical industry, shipping, oil and gas, power generation, all in the room. And we're talking about how we don't keep that statistic running of 70% of AI projects failing or not making it to production. And a couple of really interesting thoughts from the customer group in the room. One I really like. They had this concept. I think it was a chemicals customer, and they're saying you wouldn't let your apprentice loose with signing off projects, right? So you wouldn't let a 21-year-old suddenly decide. And why companies think AI should be allowed to do that? So to sort of set the parameters and just baby steps, right. baby steps. Check that AI is delivering a decision a human has already made, and that's your safety cage. So that was the first part. The second part was. Many of these projects are being driven because increasingly, and this kind of comes back to the partnership, capital is under scrutiny. So you need to justify to your board, to a regulator, to somebody who's overseeing your industry, why you're spending that capital and for what purpose. AI is brilliant. You come back to all of the decision-making data that we have between us, but it needs to be really controlled, an evidence chain. So we're talking about models that are hosted within an organization. Using AVEVA's experience, IFS's experience to build those models. And if you do the baby step approach of don't let it loose too fast, too quick, and you do that model based on deterministic information that we have together, that's when you are in the 30% that makes it to production.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think we talked a bit about this. Caspar talked about it in the keynote. I think we both share a lot of the same values because we obviously serve the same customer base. And for us, this idea of how do you really bring pragmatic AI into an industrial space? I mean, our chief technologist talked about this was today, and she said, would you allow would you hire somebody that hallucinates 10% of the time to go make a decision in our industry, right? Or would you do it 1% of the time? And the truth is, of course, not. And so for us, it's always around how do we drive the empowerment of people. And to your point, I think it's right. It's those baby steps showing incremental progress, because there's no question there's opportunity utilizing this technology, but we have to do so with that domain expertise and that domain specificity. And I think that's what also gets me super excited about this partnership. I think maybe give your point of view on this, but we sure seem to have lots of industrial customers and industries that we serve that are overlapped.
Totally. I mean, from manufacturing to oil, gas, chemicals, utilities, it's there. There's a really complementary fit. And one of the questions that we've been talking a lot about on the floor recently, customers have come up and they said, how are these two offerings going to fit together? And the answer is they're really complementary, and they touch in places. We do some things that you do some things that we do.
Sure.
But I think that's actually what's got the customers excited, because too often these partnerships fail because on paper they sound fantastic.
That's right.
But we've both walked the walk with our customers and implemented so tightly together already. There's a sort of sense that this is quite real and tangible.
No, I think you're spot on, and we talk about this quite a bit. Is that we have this belief that in order for us to really move industry forward, we have to engage in collaboration more. We often term this radical collaboration, and it's just a mindset that we need to be able to recognize that where we have synergy and we have commonality and common goals, and there may be places where you have overlap, and that's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, the only way we're going to really help to bring industry forward is by leaning into these relationships. And what's really interesting about these things, that a lot of times that you look at people on paper, the marketing, because my aunt would always give me this saying. She would say, Bri, the big print giveth and the small print taketh away. So don't be too enamored with the big print. When you actually start talking to people, you start to realize that the little print, there's actually more commonality than there is actual conflict.
Yeah.
And it's okay if there's some overlap there, but I think to that end, it allows us to basically be able to speak the same language, allow us to actually act faster, and allow us to basically align on customer problems quicker.
If you think about acting fast and aligning, one of the things that I think we have in common is the number of people who work in AVEVA or work in IFS who are actually from industry.
That's right.
We're not just technologists from California who grew in a lab.
That's right.
These are folks who've spent 20 years on the front line, on the cutting edge. And now if you then overlay the technical capabilities that we bring as software vendors, that again is where perhaps the customers are giving us a real opportunity to demonstrate what we can do. Whereas perhaps they may be skeptical of an AI startup, however brilliant the technology is.
No,
so I think we're well placed as a group.
Totally. Any kind of gut feel on where you think, which industry, any specific industry you think is going to be maybe more apt to jump in quicker than others? Any kind of initial gut feel on that?
I have changed my mind over the last 3 months. But this week has reinforced the change. So I was skeptical that regulated industries would be at the forefront of some of this kind of AI predictive analytics decision making. Because too difficult, the regulator was like, well, I don't trust, where is the decision, I want to see it. We'd seen a 180-degree switch by the regulators, and I'm talking chemical industries, I'm talking utilities, in the last 3 months. They're actually saying now, if you want to put a decision in front of me or demonstrate evidence behind a decision, AI is actually better than asking 17 humans and finding 5 pieces of paper. So it's been a complete flip. So my money's on utilities, transmission, distribution, oil and gas, power generation.
Well, I think we actually all know that those are the industries that absolutely are going to be critical for us to be able to deliver ourselves on our own mission, which is helping drive responsible use of the world's resources. We all know that utilities are going through massive transformation. Combination of course, the different types of fuel sources that they're looking to utilize, whether it's driving more sustainable type fuel sources, battery, behind the grid. There's just so many factors. The data center power needs that are coming. There's just so much there that it's really ripe for capital investment. How do you make smart decisions on some of that capital investment? So actually, I think you may be right. I think actually maybe utilities is the place. It's the dark horse in some of these these conversations usually, right? Because we usually think about them as being ones that are a little more reticent because of the challenges they have with regulation.
We think of it as the energy transition, and these folk are wrestling with a lot. It's whether it's a kind of political switch of direction in terms of where your generation comes from, as you said, capacity, availability, price pressure, right? Most countries around the world are focusing, the regulators are very focused on the consumer. They've got to manage all of this. Every dollar counts. And I think it's only when you start to see the opportunity where the AVEVA data and the IFS data comes together that they can see a path through this very complex decision process.
Yeah, and particularly with resiliency really becoming at the very top of utilities and honestly states, their entire priority list, just because of the fact of it obviously goes directly to national security. But anyway, before I get you out of here, let me just ask you one more question. If you could take one word to describe your experience here at AVEVA World, what would that be?
Okay, it's my first time at AVEVA World, and so I'm going to use the one word of anticipation. I can't wait to the next one, and I'm also looking forward to seeing you at IFS Unleashed in Orlando in October.
And we will be there.
It's our reciprocal.
Absolutely, we will be there as well. Gold sponsors at IFS in Orlando, and thank you so much, Tom.
Brilliant. Thank you.
It's going to be fun.
Cheers.